All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking a really groundbreaking study that might just change how we think about one of the deadliest diseases out there. I mean, it's the first thing that comes to mind, isn't it? When you hear lung cancer, you immediately think smoking. And look, for decades, that's been the main public health message, for very good reasons. But what if that's not the whole story? What if there's a massive, hidden risk factor that has absolutely nothing to do with tobacco? Just look at this number. Let it sink in for a second. 93%. That is not some small statistical blip. It's a giant public health puzzle. In Taiwan, the overwhelming majority of women who get lung cancer have never, ever smoked. This one stat just turns what we thought we knew completely on its head. And it forces us to ask a really important question. What on earth is going on? So how do we start to solve a mystery like this? Well, we're going to follow the science. First, we'll lay out this surprising puzzle. Then we'll introduce the detectives, this massive study designed to crack the case. We'll look at their incredible early findings, uncover the single biggest clue they found, and then we'll talk about what it all means for the future of cancer screening. This is really the heart of the matter, and it's not just in Taiwan. It's a phenomenon that's been seen across East Asia, where lung cancer in people who've never smoked, especially women, is way more common than you'd expect. Scientists knew something else had to be a major cause. But the question was, what? So, to hunt for that answer, researchers in Taiwan launched what's called the Talent Study. You can really think of it like a huge detective investigation. It was a nationwide effort to screen high-risk people who'd never smoked, all in an effort to unmask the real culprit. And these investigators were super specific about who they looked at. They got together over 12,000 people, all between 55 and 75, who had never smoked a cigarette in their life. But here's the key part. To really focus their search, every single person in the study had to have at least one other thing that was already suspected to be a risk factor for lung cancer. So, what were these suspected risks? Well, the researchers had a list of the usual suspects. You know, things that just make sense. Having a close relative with lung cancer, being around a lot of secondhand smoke, having a history of lung problems, or even getting heavy exposure to cooking fumes, like from stir-frying in a kitchen without a good fan. The stage was set to figure out which one of these was the real smoking gun. The team used low-dose CT scans, which are a really sensitive kind of imaging, to screen every single one of those 12,000 people. And what they found right in that very first round of screening, well, it was just shocking. Right off the bat, 2.6% of these never smokers were diagnosed with lung cancer. Now, I know 2.6% might sound like a small number, but trust me, in the world of cancer screening, that figure is enormous. And it wasn't just that they were finding cancer. It was when they were finding it that was the real story. And this just shows you the incredible power of screening early. Over 77%, so more than 3/4 of the cancers they found, were at stage 1. That's the earliest, most treatable stage you can find it. This is an absolute game changer, because lung cancer is notorious for being found late when the chances of survival are so much lower. Okay, to really understand why that 2.6% is so wild, let's put it in context. There was a huge, famous study in the US that screened heavy smokers, the highest risk group we knew of, and they only found cancer in about 1.1% of them. This new study, looking at never smokers in Taiwan, found it at more than double that rate. It was a massive signal that they had just identified a whole new high-risk group that we'd been overlooking. So we know the screening was incredibly effective. But that biggest question was still hanging out there. Why was this group at such high risk? Which of those initial suspects was the real culprit? Well, the answer was not what a lot of people were expecting. In a really surprising twist, when they ran all the numbers, things like secondhand smoke, a history of lung disease, and even all that exposure to cooking fumes, none of them were significantly linked to a higher risk of lung cancer in this group. The clues were pointing somewhere else entirely. And here it is. This is the aha moment. The researchers split the group into two: people with a family history of lung cancer and people without. And the difference was just night and day. The rate of invasive cancer was 2.7% for those with a family history, compared to just 1.6% for those without. This was by far the strongest signal they found. And the link just got stronger and stronger. There was what scientists call a dose-response relationship. As you can see here, with 0 close relatives with lung cancer, the risk was 1.6%. Have one close relative with it, it jumps up. Have 2 or more, it jumps up again.
The message was crystal clear. The more people in your immediate family who've had lung cancer, the higher your own personal risk becomes.
And they got even more specific, which is fascinating. It wasn't just any family history. The risk shot up significantly if your mother or a sibling had lung cancer. But interestingly, having a father with the disease didn't show that same statistical jump in risk. It suggests there's a really complex mix of genetics at play here, maybe even something to do with maternal lineage.
The conclusion was just undeniable. The researchers themselves summed it up perfectly. After sifting through all the potential causes, a family history of lung cancer among immediate relatives stood out as the single most powerful predictor for never smokers.
Now, this isn't just a big deal for Taiwan. This study has some really profound implications for how we should be thinking about lung cancer screening all over the world. But like all really good science, it also brings up some new, complicated questions. One of the big ones is this idea of overdiagnosis. See, the study was so good at finding things early that it picked up a lot of non-invasive cancers. And this is a serious thing to consider for any screening program. Are you finding the dangerous cancers that need to be treated right away? Or are you also finding some that are so slow-growing they might never have actually caused a problem? Figuring out that balance is a huge challenge going forward.
So let's boil it all down. What are the big takeaways here? First, family history isn't just a side note. It is a critical risk factor, especially if you've never smoked. Second, any screening guideline that only looks at smoking history is clearly missing a massive high-risk group of people. And finally, this study screams that we need new ways to assess risk, especially for different populations around the world, and that the future of screening probably needs to be a lot more personal, taking our genetics and sex into account.
Ultimately, the talent study forces all of us to ask a question that goes way beyond just smoking. It suggests that the story of our health isn't just written by our own personal choices, but it's also deeply written into the health history of our parents and our siblings. The real question now is, are we ready to start reading that story to save lives?